Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place you come to when you need clarity on, well, some of life's most complex stuff. We sift through the sources for you. Today we're tackling something really profound and honestly often deeply misunderstood. It's that struggle, the struggle to stop doing something we know is hurting us. Destructive, even. Have you ever looked at someone or maybe even, found yourself caught in that loop, just wondering, feeling frustrated, maybe bewildered? Why? Why can't I just stop? It's a question that really cuts deep, doesn't it? Hits right at our ideas of willpower and freedom. So this deep dive, it's really custom tailored for anyone grappling with that feeling, particularly around addiction and the concept of powerlessness. We're zeroing in on step one of recovery today. We're going to unpack this twofold idea of alcoholism, what the big book describes as the physical allergy and the mental obsession. And we're not just relying on historical texts. Crucially, we're filtering this through the science, specifically James Millam's Under the Influence. Our mission here isn't about judging. It's not about preaching. It's about providing a rational, logical, but also deeply empathetic framework for understanding this powerlessness. We want to offer some real insights for anyone who's struggled to get their head around that baffling question. Why can't they just stop?
Exactly. And to really do that, we're drawing from a really rich mix of materials. We've got those foundational recovery texts, steeped in decades of lived experience, real people, real stories. Then we're bringing in the scientific analyses and the biology, the neurology behind it all, how the body and brain actually work in addiction. And finally, and this is so important, those deeply personal narratives, the raw, honest stories from people who have actually walked this path. It brings it all to life, takes it from abstract concepts to something tangible. This mix, we think, lets us get past the common misconceptions, the judgments, and really grasp the complexities. And what's fascinating, truly fascinating, is seeing how this older wisdom, born from observation, often lines up so well with modern science. It gives us a fuller picture, a less judgmental one.
Okay, let's dive into that first part then, this idea of a physical allergy. Now, I gotta say, when you first hear that, it might sound a bit off, maybe, like an oversimplification.
Yeah, it can sound strange. Allergy makes you think of sneezing or rashes.
Right, pollen, peanuts, that sort of thing. But this concept, it actually has really deep roots in how we understand alcoholism. Goes way back to the beginnings of AA. It was an idea from Dr. William Silkworth, a physician in New York back in the 30s who treated a lot of alcoholics. He was a big early supporter of AA, medically speaking.
He was, and he really hammered home this obsession plus allergy idea. He saw it as key to understanding why, from a medical standpoint, alcoholics seemed hopeless once they started drinking.
So it wasn't just a casual phrase, it was central to his explanation. He actually used it when Bill W. first talked to Dr. Bob, right? That foundational chat.
Absolutely. It was his medical framework. He was essentially saying, look, this isn't a moral weakness. It's a physical condition. Your body reacts abnormally, uncontrollably once alcohol hits your system. It was trying to find a concrete, non-shaming way to explain what looked like pure self-destruction.
Okay, so if it's not a typical allergy, what is it? This is where Milam's work comes in, Under the Influence. It gives us that scientific lens, doesn't it?
It really does. Millam clarifies that it's not an allergy like an immune response. It's about an abnormal metabolic process. Think of it like your body's internal factory for processing alcohol is just wired differently. And this difference creates toxic byproducts that paradoxically fuel the craving instead of quenching thirst or just getting you drunk in a normal way.
So where does this process go wrong?
Well, a lot of the evidence points to the liver, specifically how it handles a byproduct of alcohol metabolism called acetaldehyde. Now, acetaldehyde is nasty stuff, toxic, a carcinogen. In most people, the liver deals with it pretty efficiently. But in people predisposed to alcoholism, it seems to hang around longer and in higher concentrations. This causes distress. And critically, it seemed to trigger more craving.
And there's actual research backing this up.
Oh, definitely. Millam cites work by Dr. Charles Lieber, who did pioneering research. He found that alcoholics had significantly higher blood acetaldehyde levels than non-alcoholics, even when drinking the same amount of alcohol. That's a key physiological difference, a biological marker, if you will.
Wow, so it's not just a result of drinking heavily for years.
That's the crucial point Millam stresses. This higher acetaldehyde level isn't necessarily something that develops because someone drinks a lot. It seems to be a predisposition, a difference that's already there, that actually plays a big role in causing the heavier drinking in the first place. So, the adaptation doesn't happen because you drink too much. It's more like when someone starts drinking more often and just can't moderate. That is one of the first signs. Their body is already reacting differently, pushing them towards more, almost against their will.
So if your own body chemistry is basically betraying you, pushing you to drink more, what does that actually do to your ability to control it, even if you desperately want to?
It means the body goes through these really profound and ultimately destructive changes. My one talks about adaptations in two main areas. First, yeah, the alcohol metabolism gets more messed up, more toxic. But second, and this is huge, the central nervous system adapts too. The brain's reward pathways, how it handles stress, it all gets rewired around alcohol. And both these things feed the addiction.
Which leads to compulsion.
Exactly. Eventually, it leads to this undeniable compulsion. The person just can't maintain control anymore. They drink more than they intend. They get drunk when they didn't mean to. The choice of when or where just evaporates. It becomes this constant nagging need. Drink all the time, wherever you are. And the withdrawal symptoms, they become terrifying. Tremors, anxiety, worse.
So drinking becomes the only way to stop the withdrawal.
For many, yes. Drinking becomes almost a desperate act just to delay that physical and mental agony. Alcohol feels like the only cure for the torment it created. So at that point, loss of control is total. It's complete.
And that really gives a concrete reason why just stopping is impossible, doesn't it? It's not about willpower at that stage. The body itself is fighting against that intention, a biological betrayal, like you said.
Precisely. And this biological reality helps explain why society, and even medicine, has struggled so much with defining alcoholism. I mean, the AMA called it a disease back in 1956. That was huge.
A landmark, yeah. Should have changed everything.
It should have, but it was complicated. Even with the disease label, there was often this underlying view, even among doctors, that it was somehow self-inflicted, a symptom of psychological weakness, maybe. So treatment often got pushed to psychiatry, and there wasn't always a unified approach. It created this kind of dual perception.
Disease, but also kind of your fault.
Pretty much. The texts we looked at mention how people setting it historically tried to have it both ways. And that conflict, it contributes to the stigma, the intense conflict and emotional turmoil that still surrounds addiction. It's this ongoing tension between seeing it as purely physiological versus seeing it through a moral or psychological lens. And that confusion really hurts the person suffering, makes it harder to get help without shame. That why can't they just stop? Question still hangs heavy, often implying personal failure.
Okay, so we established the body's role, this physical allergy, this altered metabolism driving compulsion. But that's only half the story, right? What about the mind?
Exactly. This is where the mental obsession comes in. Equally powerful, maybe even more baffling.
Define that for us. What is the mental obsession?
It's that persistent, often illogical pattern of thinking that drives someone to drink, despite all the negative consequences. It's the voice that says just one, or it'll be different this time, or finds endless excuses. It's the core of that why can't I just stop paradox. It feels like self-sabotage.
And we see this play out in people's stories, don't we?
Oh, constantly. People recount these endless, desperate attempts to stop or control it. One person described this deep blueness, not suicidal, but like an airless sensation that I was already dead. So heavy.
Oh.
Yeah. And it led to him saying over and over, I think I'm going to have to quit drinking. But the quitting just wouldn't stick. Another person talked about these intense swearing off periods, going on the wagon for weeks, even months, totally convinced.
Only to
find things were worse than ever when they started again. And their conclusion was chilling. Fear had no effect. The consequences just didn't penetrate that obsession.
That sounds exhausting, like a constant internal battle.
It is. Psychologists might call it cognitive dissonance, trying to hold two opposing ideas. Drinking is destroying my life, and I need one to drink. That futile struggle for cognitive consistency, as one source put it, creates constant anxiety. It feels like fighting your own nature.
So the mind is actively working against recovery.
In many ways, yes. It employs some really powerful defenses. Blame externalization is a big one. The person knows something's wrong, they feel the chaos. But instead of looking inward or at the alcohol,
they blame everything else.
Everyone and everything around them. It's my job, it's my spouse, it's the stress. It's an unconscious shield to avoid facing the terrifying truth about the alcohol itself, because that feels overwhelming.
And how do they see alcohol in this state?
Ironically, often as an ally, a friend, a shelter from his internal and external life storm, providing those fleeting, temporary good feelings amidst the wreckage. The idea of actually quitting might not even cross their mind. Or if it does, it's dismissed as impossible, unthinkable. Drinking becomes the focus, even while trying to keep up appearances, maintaining that facade at work or home.
A coping mechanism, then.
A deeply destructive one, yes. It helps them numb out or deal with difficult feelings or personality traits. Being too sensitive, low frustration tolerance, anger, resentment, fear, needing instant gratification, depending too much on others, inability to handle disappointment, low self-esteem. The list goes on. Alcohol seems to temporarily solve these deep emotional needs.
It sounds like alcohol gets woven into their very identity.
It really does. There's this one incredibly candid quote. "I never hid my tracks. If I went to a new physician, I was right up front. I told him I'd been a heavy drinker since about 1940. It became a part of my life. I was raised that way. I couldn't imagine not having it. It was just always there."
Wow. Since 1940. That's a profound integration. It's not just a habit at that point.
No, it's like a fundamental part of who they believe they are. Taking it away feels like tearing out a piece of themselves.
Which explains why the denial is so strong, right? That illusion of control.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It thrives on illusion and denial. You hear stories. Someone gets fired multiple times because of drinking. But each time, they'd sit down and figure out the reason why it happened, always finding a good reason that excused the alcohol. Often others even bought the excuse.
And the fact they can sometimes stop for a bit, that feeds the illusion.
Exactly. Being able to abstain for weeks or months reinforces the belief that the last time was just a blip, an anomaly with a real excuse that's gone now. So they think, okay, now I can drink moderately. It's the "I can handle it" fallacy, setting them up for the next fall.
And the "I'm different" idea, the exception.
Oh yeah, that's huge, especially for newcomers to recovery groups like AA. Many think, "I'm not like those people. I'm not a real alcoholic." They compare themselves to some stereotype, maybe a parent who drank or someone homeless, and find differences. I still have my job. My family's intact.
So they don't identify.
Right. They feel they're beyond petty requirements. They have a right to be excused. It stops them from fully accepting the problem, makes them feel like they don't belong.
There's also this resistance you mentioned, almost not wanting it to work.
It sounds paradoxical, but yes. Some people go to meetings but didn't talk, didn't get to know anyone, didn't want to be known. Why? Because it felt too risky. And deep down, so admit, I didn't want AA to work. I didn't want to change.
Fear of losing the alcohol.
Fear of change, fear of losing that perceived comfort or coping mechanism, however destructive. It can keep people stuck in this awful limbo, maybe not drinking, but miserable, depressed, isolated, unable to really recover because of that deep internal resistance.
And this isn't just happening in a vacuum, is it? Society plays a role.
A massive role. The mental obsession gets reinforced constantly by our culture. The sources talk about how, especially for some groups like young, educated women, booze is a very public and very integral part of their culture.
Like it's just expected.
Totally. Socializing meant spending most evenings in a bar, simply because that's what my friends were doing. Wine was seen as necessary for any difficult conversation, for any conversation at all, because that's what I saw in movies and television. It ties alcohol to connection, sophistication, even emotional processing.
Makes it hard to see it as a problem then.
Incredibly hard. How could it be a problem if everyone's doing it, if it's just normal life? It makes just stopping feel like social suicide, like opting out of everything.
And it starts young too, right? Peer pressure, identity.
Definitely. Drinking in high school became what we did. It conferred status, helped you fit in, and those intense emotional bonds you form as a teenager, they can sear everything into our core selves, including experiences of drug use that can lead to addiction. Even early sexual experiences, the sources note, were often lubricated with alcohol, sometimes to lower inhibitions, but often, more sadly, to numb ourselves to the reality that we were doing something we didn't want to do.
That's heavy. And professional myths too, like writers drinking.
Yeah, that old trope, writers drink, it's what we do. That kind of cultural legend can enable problematic drinking for years until the person shifts from being a writer with a drinking problem to a drinker with a writing problem. The habit takes over the identity.
So it's a combination of things reinforcing the desire.
It's everything. Marketing, friends, family, your own experiences, they all conspire to create a strong mental desire to drink. It gets so ingrained, consciously and unconsciously, that we're almost trained to see alcohol as normal, desirable, even necessary. That's why real change means tackling the unconscious, which is slow to change. It's not just about conscious willpower. It's about rewiring deep-seated associations.
And what does this do to the person's inner world? Their thoughts, feelings?
It completely dominates it. Even when sober, the person described as an excessive drinker has often lost his sense of values. He has no goal in life. He is entirely concerned with drinking, sobering up, and drinking again. Everything else gets sidelined. Half-hearted consideration at best.
Just consumed by the cycle.
Utterly. And it creates this vicious psychological loop. If they try to quit and relapse, which is common, the self-hatred is immense. He hates himself for his stupidity more than ever before. And that self-hatred often gets projected outwards onto others, pushing people away.
Making the isolation worse.
Exactly. And the loneliness after stopping. It can be crushing. One person described it as loneliness like never before. The connection felt through drinking. Even the connection to self felt gone. If 95% of your relationships revolved around drinking, what's left? A huge void.
And past experiences play into this inner world too.
Significantly. The sources mention how early environment matters. A patient with a hypersensitive nervous constitution may be ill-equipped to face life. Their parents' traits, reserved father, anxious mother, could contribute to self-consciousness, making them rely on external things like alcohol to cope. It's a complex web biology, psychology, history, culture, all feeding that mental obsession.
Okay, so it's clear these two things, the physical allergy and the mental obsession, are powerful on their own. But how do they work together?
That's the absolute key. They're not separate issues. They're intertwined, feeding each other constantly. A destructive synergy.
A feedback loop?
A vicious feedback loop. The physical reaction fuels the mental craving. The mental craving drives the physical act of drinking. Round and round it goes, getting stronger each time.
So the body's changes affect the mind, and the mind's thoughts affect the body.
Precisely. Under the influence makes this clear. Those metabolic changes, the nervous system adaptations we talked about, they directly fuel the mental obsession. The brain starts demanding alcohol. But this is crucial. The drug's physical effects alone aren't the whole story. Most people who try addictive substances, even repeatedly, don't get addicted. This points to the importance of the individual's underlying needs, their psychological landscape, the stuff we just discussed. The drug might be the match, but the person's unique makeup is the tinderbox.
Is there brain science that shows this connection?
Yes, increasingly so. There's research linking addiction to dysfunction in the orbitofrontal cortex, the OFC. Think of it as your brain's CEO, right behind your forehead. It helps with decision-making, impulse control, weighing consequences.
And it's involved in reward.
Heavily. It's packed with dopamine and opioid receptors. In addiction, drugs like alcohol hijack the OFC. It gets powerfully affected by drugs and powerfully reinforces the drug habit. It starts prioritizing the immediate reward of the drug over everything else. All future consequences be damned.
So the mental obsession has a physical basis in the brain.
Exactly. It shows how inseparable the physical and mental are. That obsession isn't just faulty thinking. It's partly rooted in altered brain function, driven by the physical effects of the substance. Two sides of the same coin.
And the result of this interplay, it leads to behaviors that just seem insane from the outside.
Utterly baffling. Yeah. Think about the cycle. Life gets stressful, maybe because of the drinking, the response. Drink more to cope. I need this to relax. But inevitably, it just worsened every situation.
Yeah.
That desire to dull my stress leads right back to the substance. And as your intake increases, your life becomes less manageable. It's a downward spiral that seems to defy all logic.
Even when the consequences are huge, losing jobs, arrests.
Even then. Losing jobs, getting DUIs, damaging relationships, even, as one source mentioned, getting demoted in the military. Despite all that, the mental obsession kicks in, rationalizes, denies, and pushes the person to drink again. This time will be different. The level of denial is astonishing. It overrides self-preservation.
And it makes people dangerous, not just to themselves.
Tragically, yes. That belief that I'm immune, I can handle it, increases the risk of doing terrible harm. No one intends to kill another person while driving drunk, yet it happens all the time. Every 51 minutes in the U.S., someone is killed by a drunk driver. That statistic just cuts through the denial. It shows the devastating outcome when physical compulsion and mental distortion take over completely. True powerlessness in action.
Going deeper, you mentioned underlying needs and learned behaviors. It's not just the drug.
Right. Often the addiction is trying to fill a deeper void related to past experiences and the beliefs we formed about ourselves because of them. Painful early experiences, the texts say, can program both the neurophysiology of addiction and the distressing psychological states it seems to relieve. It's less about the event itself and more about the way we have allowed past events to define how we see ourselves in the present. believing you're to blame for abuse or only valuable for sex or just fundamentally unworthy. These distorted beliefs create fertile ground.
And these beliefs can shape our present.
They become self-fulfilling prophecies. We unconsciously create meanings from our unconscious interpretation of early events, and then we act out those meanings, essentially writing the story of our future from narratives based on the past. We get stuck in that loop.
Which is why addiction is sometimes called the spiritual condition.
Exactly. It means basic human needs for connection, relaxation, status, comfort get twisted. They become prioritized to the point of destructiveness. The underlying goal, like connection, is legitimate. We all need that. But addiction offers a fake version, a simulacrum, that ultimately leaves you emptier. And without a solid sense of self, connecting to something larger or even taking responsibility for yourself becomes incredibly hard. This spiritual vacuum is another driver.
This leads us to that really tricky idea, powerlessness versus willpower, especially for people who already feel marginalized.
It's a huge challenge. The whole concept of admitting powerlessness can feel like another layer of disempowerment, right? Traditional recovery warns against too much self-determination, trying to control the uncontrollable.
But for some groups, like many women, the issue isn't too much self-determination.
Exactly. As one source powerfully states, most women have yet to claim this right. Too many of us have spent our lives being selfless. If you lack a strong sense of self to begin with, admitting powerlessness feels different, maybe even damaging.
And potentially re-traumatizing.
That's the risk. If people turn to substances because they felt powerless due to systemic oppression or trauma, being told to embrace powerlessness can feel like rubbing salt in the wound. That was what made us sick in the first place, one writer notes.
So what's the alternative? How do you reconcile this?
The key insight, and this is crucial for you listening, might be about acquiring a new kind of power. Not diminishing what little you feel you have, but building a healthy sense of power. This becomes the foundation for recovery.
Redefining power, then.
Yes, not as the power to control the uncontrollable, drinking, but as agency in recovery. Power to make choices for your healing, reclaim your voice, set boundaries. It's a shift from power over the substance to power within yourself, from defeat to empowered action.
That makes sense. And this whole struggle, it obviously damages how people see themselves, right? Their identity.
Profoundly. Those obsessive negative thought patterns, the sickly thoughts, they don't just stay in the head. They solidify into circumstances of destitution and disease. Sick thoughts manifest in a sickly body. The constant anxiety wears everything down.
And even if someone stops drinking, the damage remains.
Often, yes. Simply being dry doesn't fix the disintegration of personality. Someone might still show laziness and inefficiency, have no goal in life, still be mentally consumed by the cycle, even without the substance. The identity is still shaped by the addiction.
So recovery involves rebuilding that sense of self.
Absolutely. That's where honesty comes in. Doing something like a personal inventory. It can feel terrifying, like a forced confession. But the goal isn't self-blame. It's about describing matter-of-factly what our lives have been like, how we've behaved, without judgment. That radical honesty allows you to begin to be honest with ourselves and heal our shame. It's the first step in confronting that distorted self-perception and starting to rebuild an identity that isn't defined by addiction.
Okay, this brings us to the paradox. Step 1. Admitting powerlessness to gain power. How does that even work? It sounds completely backward.
It does sound counterintuitive, doesn't it? After fighting for control for so long, just giving up that fight, it feels like defeat. But the texts are adamant. Only step 1, where we made the 100% admission we were powerless over alcohol, can be practiced with absolute perfection.
It's the non-negotiable starting point.
The absolute foundation.
Yeah.
So many people know alcohol is killing them, destroying everything, but they just lacked the power to not drink. They tried everything, willpower, rules, promises, and nothing worked.
So the turning point is admitting that.
It's that stark realization. We were totally unable to be rid of the alcohol obsession until we first admitted that we were powerless over it. That admission isn't weakness, it's facing reality. It's letting go of the exhausting illusion that you can manage the unmanageable.
Surrender, but not defeat.
Exactly. It frees up enormous energy. Think of that saying, if a man carries his own lantern, he need not fear darkness. It's about detachment, letting go of the struggle. And for many, this involves turning to a higher power, something outside of themselves, for help with what they can't change alone.
So it's acknowledging limits and opening up to a different kind of strength.
Precisely. Not becoming weak, but tapping into something bigger, whether that's a spiritual power, the
Yeah.
support of a group, the principles of recovery. It allows you to stop fighting yourself.
And that admission, that surrender, it actually opens the door to growth.
It's the necessary condition for it. It builds a new foundation. Starts with honesty, real honesty. Being truthful and honest in dealing with myself and God, as one source says. Not performing, not denying, just truth. And that leads to serenity, freedom, and joy, because the burden of pretending is gone.
And humility, that's often misunderstood, too.
Deeply. Humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less, perhaps. Or as the text defined it, a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. Seeing reality clearly.
And that's freeing.
It's an immense relief. It frees you from the bondage of self, that ego that need to control everything, and therefore from the bondage of alcohol. Slowly, people start to become aware of myself. I began to see it.
Seeing the difference between just being dry and actually being sober.
Exactly. Dry is just not drinking, often miserable, white-knuckling it, unwilling to change. Sober is different. It's being willing to learn, to practice new principles, leading to wisdom and lasting contented recovery. That self-awareness is a gift, a new state of consciousness.
What about feelings? They're often overwhelming.
The key insight is that feelings themselves aren't shortcomings. The problem isn't having feelings. It's the stubborn refusal to acknowledge feelings, to accept them, and to let them go. We don't control feelings arising, but what we choose to do about them is my responsibility. That gives you internal freedom, and freedom to be authentic, even if others disapprove. And freedom to let others be themselves, too, fosters real connection.
So admitting powerlessness isn't passive. It leads to action.
Absolutely. It's the start of active participation in recovery. It's shifting from fighting a losing battle to building a new life. Action is the magic word, as the big book says. Insight alone isn't enough.
And action changes your outlook.
Dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. That constant self-focus starts to fade, replaced by purpose, connection. As someone put it, my attitude is changed by the second A in AA, which stands for action. By working the steps, attending meetings, and carrying the message, I can be restored to sanity. It's about doing the work.
And patience is key, too. It's not instant.
Definitely not. Recovery, especially for families in Al-Anon too, is a long-term process of growth and change. Trying to rush it backfires. That's where easy does it comes from. It's not overnight. It requires patience, acceptance of the ups and downs.
And connection, finding others.
Crucial. The antidote to that profound loneliness. The unique ability of each AA to identify himself with and bring recovery to the newcomer. It's not about being clever or persuasive. It's about shared experience. I get it. I've been there. The strength of the fellowship lies in that shared suffering and the shared path to recovery. That connection makes life seem so worthwhile. It transforms the dark past from a source of shame into the key to life and happiness for others.
And for many, there's a spiritual dimension to this strength.
A profound one. Someone shared, faith looked like helplessness, but when we came into AA, we began to have faith in God. And we found out that faith gave us the strength we needed. This faith state, it's described not as passive belief, but as an active, energizing force, a sthenic affection. It overcomes despair, gives endurance, zest, or a meaning, or an enchantment and glory to the common objects of life. It brings resilience and joy where there was emptiness.
Okay, let's try and synthesize this. We've covered a lot of ground on step one.
We have. We've seen alcoholism isn't simple. It's this twofold thing. A physical allergy messing with your body's chemistry and brain function, creating compulsion. And a mental obsession distorting your thoughts, decisions, your very sense of self, trapping you in denial and craving. These two feed each other, creating that powerful cycle that makes someone truly powerless over alcohol once they start. And crucially, understanding this shows it's not a moral failure. It's a complex biopsychosocial reality. Understanding that removes judgment, opens the door to empathy, and points towards real solutions.
So for you listening, what does this all mean? If you've ever asked yourself or someone else, why can't I just stop, whether it's alcohol or anything else, maybe try this reframing. Think about the unexpected joy of being sober, the freedom it offers, and maybe shift the question. Instead of, am I an alcoholic, which can be loaded, try asking, would my life actually be better without alcohol or without whatever behavior is causing harm? It puts the focus on your well-being, your potential.
Yeah, that's a powerful shift.
This whole deep dive suggests that real freedom doesn't come from gritting your teeth and trying harder to control what you can't control. It comes from understanding this twofold nature, the physical, the mental, and making a clear, informed choice based on that reality. It's about, over time, letting your unconscious mind shed that ingrained desire. It's a journey from feeling helpless to making a powerful, informed choice to reclaim your life. So reflecting on all this, what stands out to you about this idea of powerlessness? How might seeing it this way shift your perspective on addiction, on recovery, on strength itself? Maybe embracing this truth is the first step toward finding a strength you never knew you had.